Welcome to another episode of Preferred Walk-On PFF's College Football Show. I'm your host, Max Chavik, alongside Dalton Wasserman, producer Eli back there in studio. We had Dalton on for the National Championship preview that we recorded yesterday. This episode is obviously dropping after the National Championship game, but we're recording it on Thursday. So we don't know who ultimately won the National Championship between Michigan and Washington, but we wanted to get this done before the game because this is, Dalton, our way too early top 25 for the 2024 college football season, and we wanted to drop it immediately after the national championship game is over. Of course, find us wherever you get your podcasts as well, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever. Leave your 5-star review there. Leave your questions there. Leave your takes there. We'll react to them in a mailbag very, very soon. But, man, I am so excited. We kind of went crazy. We had a whiteboard in the PFF conference room, and we just scribbled all over that thing, coming up with the top 25 teams that we think for next season. I'm excited to get into it with you, man.
Yeah, it was a wild process. I mean, obviously you land on 25, and even some of the back end was tough. I mean, I think we had between, 35 and 40 at least written down to some consideration. It's wide open, and I think the hardest part is trying to gauge with a 12-team playoff now how many of these teams, realistically, could be relevant in that. I think, to be honest with you, next year, by the time we get to the last, say, 3 weeks or so, I think there still could be that many teams relevant, because I think the goal now is win 10 games and you have a shot, right? I believe only 17 teams finished the regular season with 2 or less losses, and 5 or 6 of those were a group of 5. So it's really, I think that's the new goal, and it was tough to kind of figure out, one, how much talent all these teams had coming back between the portal and draft declarations, some of them not being made yet, and just figuring out, for me, it's a lot about who has a chance to really build off this year's momentum and find themselves in the top 12 in the playoff next year. I think the ranking process even could change a lot going forward. And as far as this goes, it's so early. I mean, we did learn you're somewhat of a psychic yesterday, to some extent, but there will be obviously no room for argument at all in this, doing it 7 months early, right? So, I mean, it was a fun process. It was hard to really differentiate, especially to me on the back end. I think the very back of this and the very top were the things we had the hardest time with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're going over our top 25 teams. You mentioned it, man. Next year's 12-team playoff, there were only 2 Power 5 teams, or actually 3, that won 10 games this year that would not have made the playoff, and that was Oklahoma, Louisville, and Iowa. Those are the only 3. So basically, if you win 10 games in your Power 5 conference, you have a really good chance of making the college football playoff. Before, if you win 10 games, you're not making it. You have to win probably 11 or more. It's going to be a lot different next year. So getting into our top 25 teams now, I want to say before we start this is subject to change. There are a lot of guys in the portal that are still very impactful players that are still in there right now. Also, a lot of players that we do not know what the heck they're planning on doing for the NFL draft, whether or not they're going to stay or go. And even we'll get into a team. There's some coaches that we still don't know what the heck their plans are either. So we will update this once all the dust has settled and once we know exactly what these teams look like next year. But we wanted to, of course, do this immediately after the national championship game was over because, after the final game of the college football season, everyone's kind of like, okay, what's next? We still love college football. We want to hear more about what's next and not be depressed that the season is over. So this is your cure for your depression of college football being over. But, Dawn, let's kick it off with our top 25 teams, starting number 25 to 21. At number 25, the only group of 5 team in our top 25, we wanted to put at least one of them in, is the Memphis Tigers at number 25. At 24 is Iowa. At number 23 is Tennessee. At 22 is Oklahoma State. And at number 21 is SMU. So let's start off with the Memphis Tigers at number 25. We kind of argued a lot about whether or not we should put a group of 5 team in the top 25, what group of 5 team we should put in the top 25, but we wanted to put one in because, like we mentioned before, a group of 5 team is guaranteed to make the college football playoff next year, and we think right now Memphis would probably be the favorite.
Yeah, I agree, and I think when you see what's happening at Liberty right now with Caden Salter entering the portal and C.J. Daniels today entering the portal, those are tough losses to overcome for a team. They did go undefeated. We saw what happened against Oregon. Next year, they very well could go undefeated again, but with a new quarterback and a new number 1 wide receiver, could be a little tougher. And it's there was several other similar caliber teams to Memphis, but I think the best thing if we're going to put a group of 5 team in to do is kind of default to the favorite in the American. That's kind of most of the New Year's 6 group of 5 berths have been the American champions. So, I was really impressed with them in their bowl game with a pretty convincing win over Iowa State. I think they have some momentum going, and I look at the American with Memphis as the favorite, and I want to say South Florida right behind them, but at only 7-6, I can't put a South Florida in there. So I think Memphis this year had a very nice season. Couldn't finish off SMU to get in the AAC title game, but with SMU leaving, I think they become for now the new favorite as the group of 5 representative.
Yeah, USF unfortunately beat my alma mater right here, Syracuse Orange. So Syracuse, we actually have the Syracuse and FAU helmets right now. Unfortunately, neither of them are in the top 25. So we will actually reveal the top 10 with helmets next to us.
We both tried to make our cases, and it just wasn't.
Dalton and I got into a screaming match because I was like, dude, Syracuse is making the college football playoff next year, I'm telling you, and you were not having any of it. So all my Syracuse fellow alums out there, or Syracuse fans, I tried, but Dalton wouldn't have any of it. Number 24, let's quickly Iowa. Obviously, this team is well coached on defense every single year. Got a new offensive coordinator. We don't know who it will be yet, but Iowa, it seems like they're always making the top 25 no matter what they have on offense.
Defense plays. I mean, they will once again have a relatively elite defense. Phil Parker, the Broyles Award winner, running the show. They're losing Cooper DeJean, their best player, but they always reload on the back end. They have they don't have a single superstar in the front 7, but they have a boatload of depth, right? And they find a way. I think the hope is that with a healthy Cade McNamara, now the offense is at least even this year, honestly, if they can get their offense to just average with the way they play defense, you've got a whole different machine rolling. They just can't have what really was the worst offense in the Power 5, if not the entire country. But I'm curious to see where Iowa goes now that you don't have divisions anymore in the Big Ten as well. You've got a more open schedule where they're not kind of sitting on that side of the conference with a lot of offenses that are similar to them. But I think their defense is always going to give them a chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Iowa, obviously, their defense will always give them a chance. As long as Phil Parker, who just won the Broyles Award as the top assistant coach in the country, as long as he's coaching that defense, man, they're probably going to have an elite one. 23, Tennessee. I am very excited about this team, man. They looked, speaking of Iowa, they destroyed Iowa in that bowl game. Nico Iamaleava, I think I said that right?
Iamaleava.
Okay, we'll get that right, trust me, because he is a guy that we need to know for next year. 5-star true freshman quarterback for Tennessee. Looked pretty good in that bowl game. He's the future now of that program, and I think with some of the pieces they have coming back, I think Tennessee should still be a team to watch next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's the right quarterback for that offense, that system, what Josh Heupel wants to do. He just, when I was watching him against Iowa, he looks like a Tennessee quarterback. Just that system, wide open, vertical throws. He's incredibly mobile, 3 rushing touchdowns in that game. And don't forget about their defense, too, with James Pierce Jr.
Oh, my gosh.
They've got serious talent on both sides of the ball, and it's just a matter of how soon they can get all that talent to execute.
Dude, James Pierce Jr., I'm telling you guys right now, we will be doing a 2025 mock draft pretty soon, and all eligible mock draft, too. We were arguing, we were actually at the bars last night, drinking, talking about guys, and we were saying, man, I was saying at least, James Pierce Jr., I think in our all-eligible mock might be edge 1. Might be. I think his speed to power is something that I've rarely seen before.
For 2025, certainly. There's a couple.
All eligible? Would you put him above Latu?
Couple of guys this year. That's a tougher argument. You've got Latu. You've got Jared Verse. We've seen with Dallas Turner. I think this year is a more loaded class, but for 25, I think certainly has the best argument.
And I think he's probably I would say he's probably a top 5 pick next year right now, projected. He is a stud. So if you don't know about James Pierce Jr., look him up, man, because he is a superstar for that defense. Another superstar kind of leading this next team, Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon, obviously coming back to school. He was the Doak Walker Award winner this year as a top running back in the country. And we just say, hey, man, Oklahoma State, as long as you have Ollie Gordon carrying the weight of this offense, I mean, they're still going to be a really good team probably.
Totally agree. I think they need a little more out of their passing game. Their defense this year was more like opportunistic at times. Came up in some big moments, especially against Oklahoma. More consistency on their defense and their passing game could have them higher than this, especially with Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12.
Yeah.
I think with Gordon rolling, and you got to remember, he basically won a Doak Walker on the strength of like 9 games.
Yeah.
He didn't play the first 3 games, and against Texas, it's just an awful matchup for them with their run defense. But I think they're, I don't know about a sleeper because they were in the Big 12 title game this year, but I think they're solidly in contention in the Big 12.
They absolutely are. And at number 21, a team that you and I both really love, not a group of 5 team anymore. They're now joining the ACC, is the SMU Mustangs right now, who bring back a lot of talent from a really, really good year this year.
Yeah, and I think the first thing you talk about is Rhett Lashley and Preston Stone. And Stone unfortunately broke his leg in the Navy game, missed the AAC title game that they won anyway, and then they went up to Fenway Park to play Boston College in really bad weather and got beat. I believe it was 24-13. Just got out physicaled in that game, but I don't think that's indicative of the team they are. When they get Stone back, Preston Stone in the second half of the season was like a top 5 or 6 quarterback. They got this offense can absolutely fly. Their defense is underrated. I think Rhett Lashley really I think there's a road here where they could contend for an ACC title. This is not like a group of 5, a normal group of 5 talented football team. They're really, really talented. They've got an explosive offense. I think they could contend in the ACC despite what we saw in the bowl game because they're going to have Preston Stone back by the spring.
Dude, absolutely. I mean, you look at what they did this year. SMU was the 8th highest graded overall team in the country this past season. The only ones above them were Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. That is a good group to be in, man. I understand they play lesser competition in the American Athletic Conference, but I do think with the talent they have coming back to, they're going to compete in the ACC immediately. Another team that is in the ACC that is starting off for 20-16 is North Carolina at number 20. At number 19 is USC. 18 Kansas State, 17 Oklahoma, and 16 Florida State. Let's start off with number 20, North Carolina. Obviously losing the best quarterback maybe in program history in Drake May. But they got Max Johnson in the portal, the former Texas A&M kind of starter this year when Connor Wegman went down with an injury. He's transferring over to North Carolina and will be starting there. And they obviously have a superstar running back in Marion Hampton and a really dominant edge player too in K'Mon Rucker. So
yeah, Hampton would be my number one reason here. He's one of the 3 or 4 best backs in the country, I believe. Did he finish second in our All-America team?
He probably did.
I think he did because we had Gordon and Hampton, but he's fantastic. He's a first down machine. And honestly, I kind of like the fit of Max Johnson going there as what I assume is going to be their new starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Really good pocket passer. I think he showed at times to be a really good vertical passer at Texas A&M. The biggest thing is that he needs protection. He doesn't move much. A lot like his dad, actually. He's Brad Johnson's son. Yeah. Much like his dad, absolute rifle for an arm, but he's not going to move much. If they have good pass protection, I don't think obviously it'll be as good as May leading the country in the regular season in big-time throws, but I think Johnson can do some things down the field, and if he's supported by Hampton in the running game pretty well, I think North Carolina could still be a threat.
I think they absolutely can be, man. I think Max Johnson was an underrated piece of that A&M offense this year. He had a 80.6 passing grade this year. Like, he was really solid for A&M. And you mentioned Marion Hampton. I mean, we're going to put out our top 10 players at every position heading into next year. I mean, Marion Hampton probably be number 3 or 4 for running backs. I mean, he is a stud, and K'Mon Rucker's going to be one of the top edges, too. I mean, he's a stud. Number 19, another team losing. I mean, Drake May going away from North Carolina. He's going to be a top 3 pick in the draft. Another team that's losing a top 3 quarterback in the draft, pick at quarterback at least, is Caleb Williams and USC. So USC replacing Caleb Williams, but man, Miller Moss looked awesome in that bowl game against Louisville. Does not mean Caleb Williams is a system quarterback. I've seen that take out on Twitter. Caleb Williams, who excels outside of the system, is not a system quarterback. So that can end right now. But they do look pretty set at quarterback with Miller Moss, and I don't think they're going to be going after Will Howard or anyone else in the portal anymore.
No, I mean, and maybe they're content with Miller Moss now. Malachi Nelson's out the door, so that's not an option either. But I think it's kind of like death taxes and Lincoln Riley having a top 10 offense. And you can't. It's hard to say anything about a system quarterback when was Baker Mayfield a system quarterback?
Yeah, the number 1 overall pick.
Kyler Murray was system quarterback.
Number 1 overall pick.
Caleb Williams.
Number 1 overall pick. Yeah, exactly.
You can't call them all system quarterbacks when they're all going first. So,
Jalen Hurts too.
Jalen
Hurts,
right? It's just everybody. So they're going in some fashion to have a top 10 offense. The question is not on offense. I mean, they always have talent. Zachariah Branch is coming back.
Yep.
You know how high we are on him.
Yep.
I just obviously clearly you thought they were going to have to put it together against Louisville, and a defense that you and I both believe in big time. We like Louisville
full strength Louisville pretty much too,
and they did. They just teed off on them. So Lincoln Riley, the offense is going to be there. They're going to have. I mean, that you walk in and you see especially Oregon and USC walking into the Big Ten, you go, well, there's no other teams in the Big Ten with offenses like this.
Yeah.
I mean, Lincoln Riley's going to find points. It's going to be a matter of figuring out his defense. They brought in DeAnton Lynn now, which is a big game.
Yeah.
When he's coaching UCLA last year. If they put together some semblance of a defense, you've previously gone over the numbers on defense for a Lincoln Riley coach team at Oklahoma or at USC. They just need to just get to average, get in the top 40 of defense, and you've got a national title contender.
Dude, absolutely. I mean, you look at UCLA's defense. last year compared to, this is D'Anton Lynn's first year as defensive coordinator for UCLA. Last year, I believe in grading wise, or at least CPA or something like that, they were like 110th or something like that. This year, they were like 4th. So, and they didn't add really anyone. It was kind of the same core of guys, and it just took off with D'Anton Lynn. So I think he's a rising star. Matt Entz, they hired too. North Dakota State's head coach went to USC to coach their linebackers. So
great stuff.
Lincoln Riley is clear. I think he's feeling a little pressure right now and saying, hey, we can't be doing this anymore. And how bad he wasted Caleb Williams. Like I mentioned this before, I think Caleb Williams is one of the biggest wastes of talent we've seen. The fact that that guy never played in the college football playoff once in 3 years.
Never won.
Nuts.
Didn't even win the conference.
Didn't even win the
conference he played in 3
insane.
years.
Yeah, so absolutely insane.
You can't be that team that loses 52-42 all the time.
And if Lincoln Riley has any NFL aspirations, no NFL team is going to look at that and say, hey, you have to have a defense. Like, you have to be a well-coached team all around. I think he's finally doing that this year. He knows, hey, I'm going to have a great offense, but it's not going to be led by Caleb Williams. Like, I can't just rely on 50 points per game anymore. I think that's why they're really making the move to defense, and I think it's going to work out for them, honestly. 18, Kansas State. Speaking of Will Howard, they're losing Will Howard now, but Avery Johnson is their starting quarterback. They still have some really good pieces on defense that I really like as well. So, yeah, even though their starting quarterback's leaving in the portal, we don't know where he's going yet. K-State still making here in the top 20.
Yeah, I like them a lot. Look, they're always fundamentally sound. Chris Kleiman, they play just good, like that complementary football, right? And I really like. First of all, I'm an Avery Johnson guy. He played a lot part-time this year, a lot of times rotating in and out with Howard. Gave him a different look. He's a better athlete than Will Howard. He's not as polished a passer yet, but we might get there. And even in the bowl game against NC State, he was the best athlete on the field, honestly. And I think it starts with their run game, the combination of him and DJ Giddens. Treshaun Ward has gone out of Boston College, but you still have Giddens, who is actually their best back this year. And Johnson's legs are a major, major threat. I think I'm curious to see where it goes with Colin Klein leaving to Texas A&M, their former offensive coordinator now. But Chris Kleiman, coming from North Dakota State previously, he used to have a guy like Trey Lance, right?
Yep.
And I don't know that Avery Johnson, I don't think his skill set is that different. Now, I don't think he has quite as good an arm as Trey Lance did. He's not as big. He's a thin athlete. He's really athletic, but he's thin. But I think you could see it work a lot of the same ways that he used to. I think it's the type of guy he used to have at North Dakota State, even like Easton Stick, right? An athlete at quarterback. And we can figure out the passing as we go. K-State, I think, among a lot of these teams that we have like 15 through 25, they might have the highest floor.
Yeah.
I just know what brand of football they're going to come out and play, and the development of Avery Johnson is then going to take them to the next step if they get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Avery Johnson was a top 10 quarterback coming out of high school, too. And this guy has a lot of potential, and I love what he shows as a true freshman. Also, he started that Pop-Tarts Bowl and won that game over NC State. And we haven't talked about the Pop-Tarts Bowl yet, man, but that might have been the best moment of the entire season.
That's my new favorite mascot.
Oh, dude. Well, not anymore. He's dead now. He's dead. They killed him.
Not to me, he is.
They publicly executed the Pop-Tarts mascot.
I'm calling for more edible mascots next bowl, except the mayonnaise one. Don't give me a live bowl jar of mayonnaise. That disgusts me every time I see it.
Yeah.
If I was a head coach and I get invited to the Mayo Bowl, I'd be like,
yeah.
I don't know if I want. Can I switch? Can I get? I'm not a mayonnaise guy. So like I don't know about all that.
I like mayonnaise, but there's some of my friends were saying to me, they're like, because they love college football too, and they're like, man, it just didn't feel like this season had like that many like, oh my god moments. And after that Pop-Tarts fiasco with the killing the mascot and then eating him after, I'm like, that is the moment. That is the moment.
That was the best part of bowl season.
It's like, you guys are wrong. That was absolutely the playoff games were great, sure, but eating the public execution of the Pop-Tarts mascot.
That's really what it was, though.
It was. They massacred my boy. They massacred my boy, dude. That was the best moment of the season. Pop-Tarts Bowl, I think that should be included in the New Year's Six games in the playoff next year. They should do the Pop-Tarts. Every year should do the New Year's Six Bowl, and they should have like the other bowl games be the playoff.
Put it in the rotation.
Duke's Mayo Bowl.
One of these years it'll be the title.
Cheez-It Bowl. Like to have the stupid bowl games also that'd be awesome. But yeah, that Pop-Tart State game was awesome. And K-State obviously reigning Pop-Tart Bowl champions. 17 Oklahoma, another team that really looked good in their bowl game against a team that we're gonna talk about later in the show, much later. Oklahoma now, man, they lose Dylan Gabriel, obviously, who's a top 5 graded quarterback in the country, but Jackson Arnold, their 5-star true freshman, Had some bad picks in the game, don't get me wrong, but man, he showed some tools, and you're like, I'm excited, at least for the future of Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, look, they were up 24-13 on Arizona before a pick six, and I believe, if I remember right, that pick six wasn't really his fault. I think that was a deflected ball. He threw two bad ones, but they lost that game on turnovers. I mean, I believe they had 6 turnovers in that game, but he flashed his talent, man. I mean, he's got the arm strength. He's got the mobility. He seemed, for the most part, outside of probably the first 2 drives, to really have some solid poise about him. There was most of those turnovers. I think 2 of them were really bad throws, but the rest, there was some bad luck involved in there too. And Arizona, look, Arizona's raging hot. They were really good at the end of the season.
And full strength in that bowl game.
And they competed really, really hard, outside of the turnovers for about 3.5 quarters. Oklahoma really had control of that game.
Yeah.
I mean, they scored 24 unanswered in the middle of the game. Jackson Arnold, that looks like the building block, right?
Absolutely.
And Venables is fixing their defense. It was a lot better this year than it was last year, and I would expect that to continue. Offensively, they just have to work through all of the transfers that they've had out, really.
Yeah, they have some big pieces come back. Like Peyton Bowen, their safety, true freshman, was a stud for them this year. I like him a lot. And obviously, you lose Jeff Lebby, big loss, going to Mississippi State to be their head coach. But I am excited with Jackson Arnold. I'm excited to see what he can do as the future starting quarterback for Oklahoma, and like top 10 recruit coming out of high school. And yeah, he had some bad throws. But then again, he's a true freshman in his first career start against a top 10-ish team. That's a tough spot to be in, and he still made some really impressive plays. So I'm excited about him, and obviously joining the SEC now. So we'll see Oklahoma. Tough task for them now going to the SEC, but we'll see. A team that kind of is falling off a little bit, even though we loved them all year. We were obviously championing them to make the college football playoff all year, and Florida State fans loved us for it. I'm sorry that we have them this low. I wonder how they're going to feel about that. But number 16 is Florida State, losing everyone. Everyone's gone now, it seems like. But they just got DJ Uiagalelei in the portal. He's their new quarterback, rejoining the ACC after leaving Clemson. Florida State, I still think, is relevant in this conversation, but obviously they have a lot of talent they got to replace.
Yeah, they do. I think that's the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing you saw in the bowl game is you just list off the names, right? Yeah. Benson, Travis, Coleman, Wilson, Bell, Verse, DJ Lundy's in the portal, Bless Harris in the portal. Corners might be gone. I don't know if any of the corners have declared yet, but
opted out.
If you're losing guys like Renardo Green, who's a stud at corner. I mean, there's just so much. This was the year, and again,
it was the year.
Yeah, this was the year, and they may have been unfairly robbed of it because of an injury. But no, I think getting DJ in is a big boost. I think getting an experienced quarterback in there, and I agree. DJ said it, I think, at his opening presser for Florida State, that he's a really good fit for that offense. I actually agree with that. I don't know that he's as accurate as Jordan Travis, but as far as a lot of the things they do that are in their run game and then trying to get down the field vertically, the biggest question for me is, I think, two things. The defensive line.
Yeah.
You know, how do you replace Verse and maybe anybody else who leaves there?
I think Braden Fisk is gone too. Yeah.
If he's gone too, I think their D-line, and then just what their weapons are, right? I think Norvell can scheme up the run game with whatever backs he has, but it's hard to see right now what they have at receiver to replace. I mean, when you're replacing Coleman and Wilson, that's a tough task.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is tough. Listen, they would have been a lot lower if DJ did not transfer there. But this, I think, at least keeps them relevant in the ACC. So that's our 20-16. Let's go over to 15-11 now before we get to the top 10. 15 is Washington, obviously playing for the national championship. Maybe they are the reigning national champions. So maybe this might be a little crazy to have the national champions at number 15, but they are losing a lot. We'll talk about them in a second. Number 14, Louisville. 13, Clemson. 12, Utah. And 11, Ohio State. Ohio State, Dawn. I was arguing for them to be in the top 10 because it feels so wrong to not have them in a preseason top 10. And who knows, maybe they will join the preseason top 10. We haven't fully finalized this yet, but as of right now, Ohio State is on the outside looking in at number 11. Let's start with Washington, though, at number 15. Like we said, we're recording this before the national championship game. You picked them to win the national championship. So you're saying the reigning national champions should still be outside of the top 10 and barely inside the top 15.
Very similar to me. There was some teams here, I think Washington, Florida State, and I could argue Ohio State too. We'll get there. That it's hard to predict because they've lost so much. This was the year for Washington.
And
right?
It might be, yeah.
Penix, Odunze, Polk, Trice, Fatanu,
McMillan,
McMillan, so many guys that are not going to be there next year.
Yeah.
It's a team loaded with NFL talent, and this is just the moment, to leave it all out there this year. And look, they absolutely deserve to be in it. I mean, look what they've done this year. It's not just about those guys. It never is, right? But Kalen DeBoer is an elite coach, right? If Ryan Grubb stays, he's an elite offensive coordinator. You're bringing in Will Rogers, who's had success in the past, not, this year at Mississippi State. Obviously, it's unfortunate what happened, over there, and their offense was kind of just a mess. But Will Rogers, I think, can capably run this offense. It's a matter of replacing, to me, the receivers more than anything, and maybe improving that defense. If they can do that and kind of balance things a little bit, then you've got something going. But it's very hard for me, with as much as is leaving, to put them any higher than this, because there's just about every team in front of them we have here, we have like some sure things coming back.
Right.
And I think Washington and Florida State both just losing. I mean,
everyone.
This was the year.
Yeah.
And it's just next year doesn't look like it's going to be the year.
And the thing with Washington that I want to bring up too is that so we're going to get to some schools in the top 10 that always every year lose a lot. But they recruit at such a level that it's always, all right, let's just reload. Washington doesn't do that. They don't. It really does feel like, okay, you don't know what's behind. You don't know what's coming next. Now, there is a chance that we are severely underrating how good of a coach Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb are. Like, maybe it really was them. Maybe it was them drawing it up beautifully. Maybe Will Rogers go in there and become a Heisman candidate like Michael Penix Jr.
I think it's the thing that gives them the biggest chance.
Yeah.
Is DeBoer. What is it?
That's why they're here.
Isn't it he's lost like 11 games in his whole life or
yes.
something? Right? Is it 103 and 11 I saw?
And I think those two are the reason why they're number 15. I don't think it's any players or anything like that. I think those two coaches are the reason why they're here at number 15. But like you mentioned, it is so tough to have them higher than this when it's just like, I don't know what the heck that team looks like next year. So that's what we're kind of tipping the cap. It might look weird if they win the national championship to have them at number 15 in next year's ranking, but they are losing everyone. And so it's going to be tough. 14, Louisville. This team obviously had an unreal year in the first year under Jeff Brom. Bring back a lot of really, really talented players. Ashton Gelati is coming back at edge defender. And they also, they murdered the transfer portal as well. Calvin Lacey going there. Jordan Girard, the D-tackle from FIU, going there. Some other really talented players as well. I mean, Louisville, I still think is going to be one of the top contenders in the ACC next year.
Yeah, no, I think Don Chaney went there also from
yes,
Miami. Yeah, I mean, they loaded up on talent. They did a really nice job. It's unfortunate the way the season ended, losing their last 3 games. I think especially the Kentucky game that really kind of hurt them. It stunted the momentum a bit because they made a lot of mistakes in that game. They beat themselves in that game, and then the bowl game is what it is. USC, it's hard to prepare for Lincoln Riley no matter how much time you have. But no, Louisville's got momentum. I mean, no matter what they can, no matter what you look at the end of the year, they played, I believe, that was their first ACC title game. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, this year is nothing short of a massive success for them, considering where they were. Really, since Lamar Jackson left, it'd been really, really middling. This is really the best year they had since Lamar. And you could argue being in the ACC title game, their best year ever. There's a lot of talent coming in there. It's a matter of now it looks like they've got Tyler Shuck coming in at quarterback.
Yep.
If he can keep that momentum going, because I don't think quarterback even this year was necessarily like their best asset.
No.
So, if he can go in there and just keep the momentum going and maybe give him even, I think, a little more mobile dimension than Jack Plummer, things get really interesting. But they're built on running the ball and defense, and that's still going to be there.
Yeah, Gerard Jordan obviously declaring for the NFL draft is a big loss for them as well. But, man, they like I said, they killed the portal. Corey Thornton, a corner from UCF, graded out really well for us. He's transferring there. Ja'Cory Brooks, who last year was Alabama's #1 receiver, he's going there. They got Colin Lacey and Ja'Cory Brooks. Thor Griffith, who was like one of the highest graded FCS players this year at Harvard, he's going there.
I know Jordan's leaving, but I really like the combination of Donald Chaney and Isaac Garendo. Well, a physical monster of a running back. They even put him back there on kick returns sometimes. And I don't know if I've ever seen a bigger kick returner in my life.
No.
I mean, he's physical. Donald Chaney was really good for Miami, and now he's coming over that. I think it starts on the ground, and like you said, Lacey and Brooks, they're getting some dudes in the portal at receiver too. So They just needed to gel as early as possible, and you could. I think they have every bit of a chance to win the ACC.
Absolutely. They got Monroe Mills, a tackle from Texas Tech that's been pretty solid, especially in pass protection. I mean, they did really well in the portal. That's why they're staying in that top 15 range. 13, Clemson, a team that's kind of had a disappointing year this year, but they kind of finished it on a high with winning their last 5 or so games. They actually, Dalton, I don't know if you saw, they won every game since the infamous Tyler from Spartanburg call. So
it's all about motivation.
That lit a fire. Did you see Dabo celebrating the Gator Bowl as hard as he was celebrating the national championships?
Oh yeah,
I love that, dude. Everyone was making fun of him for it. I was like, dude, we need to keep these bowl games alive. This is great that he's celebrating it like this. But Clemson at number 13, Cade Klubnik obviously coming back at quarterback. They have some serious talent on defense though that's coming back as well. So Barrett Carter, linebacker, he's announced he's coming back. They got some really young players. Peter Woods, their D tackle, true freshman, he's coming back. Really other great players that are true freshmen, true sophomores too. So Clemson defensively should still be really good, but and right now they're our highest ranked ACC team going into next year.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of the passing game getting more consistent, right? I think is Cade Klubnik, is he going to be a superstar that he was recruited to be, right? I think early in the year it was really a struggle. I think you saw from the outset in the Duke game, it looked like they were a better team trying to hide Cade Klubnik, and I think the difference between them getting into the playoff and not is just going to be his development. I mean, they need to just a little more out of him. They're going to be a good running team. They're going to have a great defense. They have a top 10 defense every year. This is not a question. It's just going to be about them getting their passing game together. They lost Bo Collins too. He went to Notre Dame. I mean, they have to find something through the air that's more than just play actions into the flat. Because if they can get vertical again like they used to, all the quarterbacks they had, Boyd and Watson and Lawrence and all of that, then they have balance. And a Clemson team with balance is always scary.
It absolutely is. Yeah, it was Will Shipley declared for the draft literally last night, but we don't know about Phil Maffa yet. That'd be a huge get if they get him back. Defensively, you got, like I said, Peter Woods, the D tackle, true freshman, 5-star recruit coming out of high school, 86.1 grade this year. He really played well for them. And then Khalil Barnes, also a true freshman at safety, was one of the 10 highest graded safeties in the country too. So they have a couple stars on that defense that are only true freshmen. So yeah, Clemson's defense should be really good, and now it's just a question of, can the offense with Garrett Riley year 2, can it finally get the thing going and become Clemson that we know of the past, honestly. 12 is Utah. You wanted them to have them lower, Dalton. I convinced you to put them here at number 12. I consider them to be one of the top contenders for the Big 12 next season, now joining the Big 12, because Cameron Rising's coming back. We know that. Brant Keithy's coming back as well. And Kyle Whittingham and that defense is always going to be well coached. And no matter who they lose, they're always going to be really good. So I think Utah is certainly a Big 12 contender next year. And I think they're going to get back to their top 15, top 10 ways.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's some good arguments there. Rising coming back is the biggest one. And they always play very fundamentally sound football. I mean, this year it's why they stood a chance and still made a bowl game with their backups and at times their third stringers, because they just play fundamentally sound football. They keep themselves in the game, and generally they're just not going to beat themselves, right? They find ways. I mean, they move safeties to running backs, and they find elite running backs. They find ways to win. And with Rising and Keithy coming back, who may be two of the best at their position, now you're adding in talent to that. I mean, they found a way. I mean, they beat Caleb Williams with Bryson Barnes. So it's an incredible,
a pig farmer. Yeah,
incredible coaching job. Even this year, just to get to, I believe, did they finish 7-6? Is that right?
I think 8-5. I think.
Well, they lost to Northwestern in the bowl game.
Yeah. So let me.
Either way, to have a winning record with the situation that they had to beat a team like USC when not a ton of people thought they were going to do it.
8-5. Yeah.
8-5 with all of the issues and injuries and everything they had this year. I mean, that's the part where I go, yeah, maybe you're kind of right, is because you go. Plus, they're going to the Big 12 now.
Yeah, and wide open Big 12.
Next year's Big 12 is going to be wide open. I don't think it's as good nearly as this year's Pac-12 was. No, Utah. If Utah won the Big 12, I wouldn't be that shocked. They just need Rising to look. And maybe tell me this: do you think they were smart to just keep Rising out the whole year?
Preserve it. Move? Yeah, I think it was. I think once he got it was halfway through the season where I think they decided to keep him out, and I think at that point it was like, all right, that's the move. So I think, listen, also I think Whittingham might have been thinking, man, we got a 12-team playoff next year. We could sneak in there with a 12-team playoff. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that, and you know what, we keep talking about who's going to win these conferences. That's the automatic, but
yes,
you don't. There's other than the group, there's 11 spots. And you're really talking about 4 big conferences, not power. We have to start calling it the Power 4.
It's Power 4, yeah.
Pac-12 just isn't a thing. But, like, you talk about, okay, again, it's a team that, like, maybe they don't win the conference, but maybe they go 10-2 and 11 or 11-1 and just have the right wins, and maybe they have to play a road game in the playoff, but this is how much more open it is. So it's like I think we can pick favorites to win a conference. I don't know that I would favor Utah over somebody else we're about to have, but they certainly stand a chance. They've been prime time before.
And dude, they won the Pac-12 we won the last 2 Pac-12 titles with Rising at quarterback. Yeah. And now he's back. And now it's like, okay, you go from a conference that was loaded now to an easier conference. It's still going to be really good, but an easier conference in the Big 12 without Texas, without Oklahoma.
I think, look, I'm going to be honest, all the spotlight is on the SEC and the Big 10 because it always is. The Big 12 is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at some of these teams we have here, and there's probably a couple others with, like, some sneaky talent, but, like, the Big 12 is going to be wide open. That's another one. We're going to get to the last month of next season.
Yeah.
And it's going to feel like we're doing Big 12 games, like, off the wall,
yeah,
like all over the place, because there's going to be. I think, even this year, you weren't that far away from a 4-way tie at the top of the Big 12. I wouldn't be shocked to see something like that next year.
No, absolutely not. And dude, we haven't. Spoiler alert: they're not in the top 25, and some people might disagree with that. But Colorado is going to be in, like, Shedeur Sanders. What if he just is like a Heisman season? Travis Hunter there. You never know.
If they figure it out on defense,
you never know if they figure it out. Another team's got to figure it out, Dalton, and another team. Again, this feels so wrong to have them outside the top 10, but they're here. Ohio State Buckeyes at number 11. So can you I understand why we have them here, but just to explain to people at home why. I got to look up the last time they started the season outside the top 10, but why are they outside the top 10?
This might have been our most contentious argument because honestly, this is one of the talent lost teams. Your top 3 receivers are gone. Your number 2 back went to Kentucky. Your quarterback went to Syracuse. You're welcome. You're losing guys like Sawyer.
And the receiver went to Penn State too. I'm winning both ways here, man.
See, there you go. Now you're beating Ohio State finally. You're losing Sawyer to Imolawau, Denzel Burke. Like, there's just so much talent leaving, and we haven't heard a ton of momentum about talent coming in.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they were in the Cam Ward thing, and obviously now they're not. Now it sounds like Will Howard is going to be maybe leaning towards going there, but do we put Will Howard on the same caliber what they used to have of, like,
no,
Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud, and is he
even Kyle McCord? Is he better than Kyle McCord?
Is he? He's more mobile than Kyle McCord. I think he might be a little better than Kyle McCord, but I kind of like McCord.
I like McCord too,
and I think
especially now.
I think for as much as Day is getting ripped for not beating Michigan, I actually think Ryan Day did a really good job coaching his team this year. I think nowadays with the way football is, it's hard to coach a guy in the style of Kyle McCord, right? Who's essentially, you think about a skill set like just statue, right? Like just no movement at all from your quarterback, and he still found a way to do it. Howard would be, if he goes, more athletic, but they're losing just boatloads of talent. First round type talent. Is Cade Stover declared?
I think he has.
If you're losing him too, and I love him too, but it's just gone. And we haven't heard anything about replacements or anything in the portal, really. Not a whole lot going on there. I could have put him lower down there with Washington and Florida State. You wanted him in the top 10. This is kind of in between. They might be the hardest team in the country right now to evaluate.
They are. And so there's a couple guys here that I think will help out a lot that might come back. Travion Henderson, I've heard they're really trying to raise money to get him back. That'd be huge. Emeka Egbuka is another one I heard that is thinking about it. I don't know if he actually has declared yet. That's actually a good question. But he played in the bowl game. I don't know. He didn't have a year that he expected to have, and maybe he thinks, okay, Harrison's gone now. I could be the top guy.
This is a loaded receiver class, too. Yeah. I'm going to be honest, for as much as I think we both like Egbuka, is it possible that he's actually in this year's class a second-round pick?
Yeah, he might be. So that's why
it seemed surefire earlier in the year. There was some talk about how he might be wide receiver 2 behind Harrison.
Right. I had him number 2. Yeah. I had him number 2 going into the year. Yeah, but that'd be huge. So again, we reserve the right to change this list. We don't know what the heck this team looks like yet, but as of right now, they're not in the top 10 right now, which feels wrong. And actually, I looked it up, Dalton. The last time they started the season outside the top 6, let alone the top 10, was 2012. So we're talking about like 11 years ago. They were number 18 starting that season. They actually finished the year number 3. So even when they were doubted that year, they ended up.
Maybe we're doing something good for you, Ohio State fans. Maybe we're letting people sleep on you a little bit and then make the comeback in the new Big Ten.
It feels wrong. It feels so wrong. But it's like when we were arguing, you're like, okay, what do they bring back? I'm like, I don't care. It's Ohio State. It's Ohio State. They have to be top 10.
Eventually, I just think.
I'm a little.
It just has to be about talent, doesn't it?
I care more about the helmet than I think about the talent there. I think right now, which is what it is. And Ohio State, granted, Ohio State is one of those teams like Georgia and Alabama that just reloads, and maybe they do have these freshmen that are just gonna be studs. But man, we don't know. It's just like that. It scares me a little, and I understand why we don't have a top 10, especially because the top 10 we're about to get to, man, is pretty loaded. So let's actually start off with the top 10 with our number 10 team in college football heading into next season. That is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who obviously killed it in the portal this year. They've lost some guys in the portal as well, lose some big-time players to the NFL draft, but still starting off at number 10, especially with the talent they have on defense coming back, man.
That's the big one for me, the talent on defense. Howard Cross, Riley Mills, Jack Kaiser all coming back. That front seven, Marcus Freeman coaching it. They don't give up big plays. It was still one of the highest graded defenses in the country, bringing most of what they have back. It's an excellent, excellent defense that gives them a terrific floor. And I think Notre Dame may be the single biggest beneficiary of the new playoff. Because we've talked about it before. I don't really understand why they're not in a conference. But now, top 12, Notre Dame. It's
that money.
It's
the NBC money,
TV,
man.
It's all about. It's all.
Take it up with our boss,
TV.
Chris Collinsworth. If you want to change it, man.
Yeah. It's just they have such a high floor, and they're the team. Honestly, with the schedule they build for themselves. I mean, they still play like half their schedules, ACC games, right? 6 or 7 games. They're the team. They win 10 games. 1, they're Notre Dame. 2, they are pretty darn good. They're going to put them in. They're going to find a way to put them in the top 12. If Notre Dame has 10 wins, it's just going to happen. But their defense gives them a high floor. Riley Leonard's a better athlete than Sam Hartman. If he develops the way some people think he can, that's going to work a lot better than Sam Hartman. Chris Mitchell, right, coming in from FIU at receiver.
Bo Collins,
they're trying to just build this offense from the outside in. Big losses, obviously, in the offensive line. Joe Alt,
Blake Fisher,
the center,
Zeke Worrell,
they have to build the offense, but the defense gives them such a high floor with just studs coming back left and right. Cross and Mills in the middle, like the way we had Sweat and Murphy at Texas this year. Cross and Mills is pretty much right behind them.
Yeah.
And next year will look like that pairing. Like good luck running the football on Notre Dame next year, honestly.
And Jack Kaiser, stud linebacker. We didn't talk about him enough. Stud linebacker. He's going back as well. Another guy that we didn't really talk about too much because he didn't really grade out that well, but he led the nation in picks. He won the Bronco Nagurski Trophy as a top defender in the country. Xavier Watts, safety, also coming back as well. So that's a big get for them. Mitchell Evans.
I was just going to get there. Mitchell Evans. Long as he recovers well from the ACL, that's.
Is he the number 1 tight end heading into next year? I think he is, right?
I think so. I'm not coming up with any other guys off the top of my head, but I think his label next year is going to be Riley Leonard's best friend.
Yeah,
because Mitchell Evans is really, really good, and I think actually that's where their offense started to go downhill is when he got hurt.
Yeah,
because he just adds.
He's a security blanket.
Adds the dimension. It's not just even that. It's the dimension up the seam.
Right.
Like the vertical down the middle. He was the only guy that got vertical between the numbers for them. It's like you just saw explosive plays just disappear. And Evans, literally, that's what I would call him. It wouldn't shock if him and Riley Leonard were best friends next year. I wouldn't be shocked at all because Evans is really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously we got to mention what they lost as well. Audric Estimate gone, Joe Alt, Blake Fisher, Sam Hartman, Cam Hart, really good corner, J.D. Bertrand, really good linebacker. So they lost a lot. But they're bringing back a lot. They really murdered the portal. Another thing, we'd be remiss if we don't mention this. They hired Mike Denbrock, LSU's offensive coordinator, as their new offensive coordinator. Gerard Parker, who's recently hired, I think it's Troy's head coach. Yep. Notre Dame fans, it's like addition by subtraction to a lot of Notre Dame fans. They were pretty happy about Gerard Parker leaving. You get Mike Denbrock. LSU had the number 1 offense in the country this year. I understand they had a crazy talent, but man, that's good.
But I do think about, sometimes you just go styles make fights. And I think, now, Riley Leonard is not the same athlete as Jaden Daniels. But he's a pretty.
But he can run.
But he's a pretty darn good athlete.
Yeah.
Like Riley Leonard is one of the best athletes in college football at quarterback. And you think about the things in the read game, things just getting him on the move, allowing him to scramble, creating space, and being free. That's a pairing that actually we're going to need to watch. I don't know, at Notre Dame they don't have like a big tradition of wide open offenses.
Right.
And I don't think it'll be as wide open as LSU was last year. But I think stylistically, when you look at Leonard's skill set and you look at Daniel's skill set, and it's not that different. I just don't know that Leonard can get down the field like Daniels did this year. But Daniels, for 4 years before this year, we didn't think could get down the field either, right? I think, was it last year he had 16 big-time throws, and this year he had 32 or 33? I mean, if he unlocks Leonard vertically, and they can get things going down the field and create space and get his feet going like he did, obviously, I mean, he's a natural runner. I think it's an interesting pairing, but for me, again, the biggest thing that is going to allow them to experiment with that earlier in the year is their defense. Their defense. It gives them a wicked high floor where it's like early on, look, if things don't gel all the way and they only score 21 to 24 points, they're still going to win those games.
Right.
Like they can do that. I mean, even the Ohio State game, they lost, was it 17 to 14? Right. They're used to playing in those games, so they're not going to ask Leonard to score 40 points a week. They don't need that like LSU needed that, right?
Yeah.
But I think the style with the new offensive coordinator, with Leonard, and just, if they can get these weapons to gel with it, they're going to be a problem.
They absolutely are. Another guy I wanted to bring up really quickly, R.J. Oben, not the only Duke player. Riley Leonard's not the only Duke player transferred to Notre Dame. R.J. Oben, who graded out really well for us, edge defender from Duke. He is also entering the portal. Last year, he actually graded out a lot better than this year, but still, I think he's a really talented edge that is going to Notre Dame. So that's another one. So Notre Dame at number 10. At number 9 now, another team that we love all year, Dalton, and they're bringing back everyone, is the Missouri Tigers. We have them at number 9, bringing back basically everyone on offense, man, and I am super excited for the Missouri Tigers, and they should be one of the top contenders in the SEC East next year.
Absolutely. I think the biggest question is losing Cody Schrader. I mean, you know what you're going to get now. Brady Cook's coming back for another year. Kirby Moore, they didn't lose him to any head coaching. Yeah. We love Kirby Moore, that system they're running. Luther Burden might be the best receiver in the country next year. Solid defense that they're adding talent to. We'll get into that. But the biggest thing is replacing Schrader and the toughness. I think really in the second half of the year, you saw it in the bowl game against Ohio State. Still had all their defense out there, had to get physical with them, right? There was certain games that Schrader took over. They kind of were finding – there's still times where Cook is a gunslinger, put the ball in danger a little bit, finds, a little out of rhythm. I know Burden had a hamstring problem late in the year. They really leaned on Schrader heavily late in the year. And how are they going to replace that and keep the balance in their running game? Because I believe they had a top 6 run blocking crew this year. So replacing Javon Foster at left tackle and replacing Cody Schrader and keeping the balance in this offense, because I've told you before, I think there's elements of this offense that look a lot like kind of like a Sean McVay kind of offense where and the play action is big time and play action and flood concepts and finding matchups and reading coverages is great, but it starts with the run game. A lot of it started with Schrader, and they just need to replace his production back there.
Absolutely. Listen, not only Burden and Kirby Moore, Brady Cook, Connor Tollison, their center, one of the top highest grade centers of all year, he announced he's returning as well. Theo Weiss, he hasn't announced yet, but all the rumors are he's returning as well. So if they get him back, that's huge. Marquise Johnson, they can get him back as well at receiver. He's really good. Obviously, you lose Cody Schrader, you mentioned him. Chris Abrams-Strain's gone as well. Big loss in the secondary. Another big loss in the secondary is Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the other corner. He's a really good player. Javon Foster, one of the best left tackles in the country, is gone. Darius Robinson, really underrated edge, is gone as well. But they, like I said, that offense is just so good, and we have to have them at like this high because Luther Burden III, I think, is the best receiver heading into next season. Going to be probably a top 5 pick in the draft. And then also, man, they have some talent in recruiting and in the portal. Williams Waneri, an edge defender, was the number 2 overall recruit in the country coming out of high school. He is going to Missouri, so that is a huge get for them who needed defensive talent. Darius Smith, a really highly rated linebacker at Georgia, He transferred to Missouri as well. Caden Green, who started basically the whole season for Oklahoma at left guard, he was a stud for them. He's transferring over to Missouri. And then to replace maybe Cody Schrader, Marcus Carroll, Georgia State's running back, who I like a little bit, he's also transferred to Missouri. So they got some really interesting pieces that are also joining a loaded offense and hopefully a better defense next year too.
Yeah, in one area, that's an interesting one, because for me, I think the only thing Missouri didn't have this year was like one primetime pass rusher. Like when they got to the quarterback, it was schemed up, right? It was blitzes. They ran a ton of stunts. I mean, they can scheme up pressure, but they didn't have anybody on the D line if they needed to just rush forward in a traditional manner that was just like that guy.
Yeah,
he could absolutely be that guy. I think that's as good a fit. If they were going to get like a 5-star guy like that, that's as good a fit as there could be. He could and probably should start day one, honestly, or at least be a big contributor, because they just need that dude on the defensive line. And if they can get that, especially with what you said, losing in the coverage unit, maybe it tilts towards the pass rush, and maybe we're trying to get scary in the front seven, and then teams are rushing throws and doing all that. I mean, they can still scheme up all that stuff. It's clearly in the back pocket, right? They did it all year, but adding a rusher like that, and just the statement it makes for like Missouri, who before this year was middling, now making big statements left and right, beating Ohio State, winning SEC games, doing all this stuff. And now you get a 5-star guy like that. That's an incredible accomplishment.
The last time I don't think they've gotten any top 3 overall recruits since Dorial Green Beckham back in 2011, 2012. And obviously he battled some stuff off the field as well. But he ended up being a good player in college when he did play on the field. But since then, they've only had 2 top 3 overall recruits go in there. Luther Burden III, who best receiver in the country, and now Williams Nwaneri. So if he ends up like Luther Burden III and ends up being that good, that's a massive win for Missouri. So it's tough to expect a true freshman to come in there and just dominate immediately, but he was the number 1 defensive player coming out of high school. So who knows? Let's go to number 8 now, which is my Penn State Nittany Lions here at number 8. Obviously,
you can't tell from the helmet logo, but
no, there's no logo on the helmet. There is the blue line right there if you want to see that. But Penn State obviously losing a lot of talent to the NFL draft, but they bring back some talent on offense, and this is always kind of a team that you just have to have in that top 10 to 15 range every year, basically.
It's another one. It's kind of like Notre Dame. The floor on the defense, we know their defense is going to be fine. I mean, they lose Chop, and they probably lose. I think, did Kalen King declare?
He announced, yeah.
You're losing Kalen King, but they're going to have a high floor on defense. They're Penn State, right? It's kind of I don't.
Manny Diaz gone though.
It's kind of Manny Diaz is gone, but their defenses were pretty darn good before Manny Diaz too.
Yeah,
they're going to play great defense, and I think to me with Penn State. They're like there's I guess smallest question mark. They're like the safest bet is the fact that they do have Drew Aller. Like I don't doubt Drew Aller one bit. I'm pretty sure he had top 15 or so passing grade somewhere, maybe even top 10. Like very safe with the football, capable of making every throw. Like I think people who are putting the blame on Drew Aller for any of Penn State's failures this year are looking in the wrong spot.
I agree.
They just. The O-line, other than Fashanu, wasn't great. The receiving core wasn't great. They're trying to build that now, getting Julian Fleming in there. They obviously need more. Dante Cephas just entered the portal.
Yeah.
They need weapons. Aller's got all the talent. He's got all the talent in the world. He can be as good a pocket passer as anybody in the country. Like, I don't think – take like Drake May. Drake May's a better athlete, but I think from within the pocket, I think Drew Aller can do all the things in the pocket that Drake May can do. But they need weapons, man. That's the biggest question for me, especially when you're playing great defenses, right?
Yeah.
You're playing, I think are they avoiding Michigan this year? Is that what
I think they're avoiding Michigan.
But you're playing a lot of good defenses in the Big Ten, and they just because they can't be explosive yet. They play in way too many closer games than they should, but their defense gives them a high floor. And Drew Aller, the one thing you have to love with him, he doesn't put the ball in danger. He might have his misses, and he might try to put it in some tight windows sometimes because just not a lot of guys open. But I think he's a high floor quarterback. They have a high floor defense. All that's and the pressure is going to be the urgency level is going to be off the charts. And I think they're another one. Big Ten, no more divisions. If you're one of the 2 best, you get in the conference title game, get out there and be one of the 2 best. You don't have to win the East anymore and beat them both and do all that. But I think they're a team with a really, really high floor that the expectation should be playoffs or bust.
It should be. And look at the schedule right now. They avoid Michigan. They avoid Oregon, too, which is huge. They play Ohio State. They play Washington. They play USC. But that's really it as for the teams we have in this top 25. So those are the only three they play in the top 25, and Penn State's, in our opinion, is ranked above all of them. So they avoid Michigan and Oregon, which is huge. So it could be a great year for Penn State. I agree with you, man. I think any blame that Penn State fans have on Drew Aller is sorely, sorely misplaced, man. I think this guy's a stud. I think he still could be a first-round pick in next year's draft. The receivers were not getting open. The offense was horribly designed. I mean, they had a big-arm quarterback that they never let throw the ball down the field. It made no sense, and I understand the receivers couldn't get open to begin with, and the offensive line outside of Olu couldn't block.
That's what should be said here. Drew Aller is perfectly capable of making every throw on the field.
He wasn't allowed to.
Rifle, absolute, honestly, this is okay. People relax when I say this, but I think the style of passer he is, huge lower body, doesn't move a ton, but moves enough, so easy, 50. I think the body type and the way he throws the football does remind me of Andrew Luck.
I like that.
I'm not saying at all relax on whatever comparison of talent you think that is, but Luck made downfield throws look easy, and Aller makes downfield throws look easy. Every time I saw him throw a bomb, there was, I think, 2 against Indiana.
Yeah.
There was 1 against West Virginia off platform.
His Michigan State tape was crazy, too.
Yeah. I mean, he's perfectly capable of doing everything you need him to do. And I mean, you have to find the weapons, first of all, that can separate, and then just let him do it.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to see. They got the offensive coordinator from Kansas.
Yeah, Andy Kotelnicki, yeah.
What that offense looks like. Because if he runs it the way he ran it with Jalen Daniels, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense. But if there's adjustments, I think the one thing, too, is they'll be better. Look, you're not going to build the country's best receiving core overnight. No. What Kansas' offense was really good at was creating space.
Yep.
Just create space. Get him, the easy throws can be easy, and then ask him to take shots when you need him to. But he's perfectly capable of making every throw on the field. And I think he might be the biggest reason that we still have him in the top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, Dalton, do you know that Kansas right now we're actually finished with the season, basically. They're the number 2 receiving grade in the country behind Washington.
It's big time.
And they don't have a dude, it's not like that. So if Kotelnicki could do that and just scheme these guys open, that is
huge. It's about creating it. And Washington is the team, I mentioned in the preview show about they have the combination of talent and scheming them open.
Yeah.
One or the other is fantastic. But I mean, look, they just added Julian Fleming.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like Penn State. I don't know where it happened or where or when it happened that Penn State all of a sudden just couldn't find receivers.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a ton of sense.
They always had one star, and they always just over rely on that one star, but they always had the one. It's just this year they didn't have it, and it was just that's when it blew up, is when you don't have that guy. But yeah, Kotelnicki joining at offensive coordinator, I like that hire. He does. I like the offense as he runs to Kansas a little bit, because there's a little bit of everything that you see in his offense. So hopefully he could cater it around Drew Aller, and I think that's the way to do it. Tom Allen, also defensive coordinator, the fired Indiana head coach, now the new defensive coordinator at Penn State. So kind of like Manny Diaz, who was fired at Miami, joined a defensive coordinator, then got a head coaching job at Duke. Maybe Tom Allen could do the same reclamation kind of project at Penn State. So we'll see there. But yeah, man, Penn State losing Olu Fashanu, losing Chop Robinson, losing Kalen King, Adisa Isaac leaving as well, Theo Johnson, the tight end, Curtis Jacobs, the linebacker, Daquan Hardy, corner, all leaving. But they do bring back some talent. I mean, Drew Aller, you mentioned him before. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, 2 really good backs they have. Kevin Winston Jr., not a lot of people talk about him. I think he's going to be one of the top 5 to 10 safeties heading into next year. He's a star. Kobe King, Kalen, actually, his twin brother, graded out really well at linebacker for Penn State this year as well. And then another guy, they lose Chop and Adisa Isaac at edge. Another guy I'm really excited about, because every time he's on the field, he flashes, and he was a top 20 recruit coming out of high school, is Denai Dennis Sutton. And so he's the new starting edge for Penn State. I am excited for him, man. I think he could really blow up. He's got crazy physical tools. Like I said, former 5-star recruit, and it was limited snaps, but every time he's on the field, he flashed. And so I think that is a guy that I'm really excited to see at Penn State next year. So we'll see for the Nittany Lions. Hopefully this will finally be the year they get over the hump, but knowing them, maybe not. But we'll see. Number 7, Dalton, a team that I know this one might cause a lot of a lot of comments in our comment section, but we have the Arizona Wildcats as our number 7 team in the country heading into next season. And obviously, I know you love their receiver they got there in Tetairoa McMillan, but they have a lot of other talent that's returning as well, man.
Oh, I think it starts with Noah Fifita and Tetairoa McMillan in this passing game. They just, earlier in the year, it was kind of high percentage, short throws, screens, run the ball. Jonah Coleman, a wicked physical runner. I mean, just he'll run you straight over. They've got everything offensively you could want, and they ended the year just raging hot. They played the second half of the year like a top 10 team every week. They just offensively, Jedfish found it with Fifita, and it's only weird because coming into the year it was supposed to be Jaden DeLaura doing all that, and DeLaura got hurt, and Fifita you just couldn't take him back out, right? I think the big things for this team, for me on the plus side, I think this is another one. Big benefit going to the Big 12, away from this year's Pac-12. Right, I almost wonder if they were in the Big 12 this year, how much sooner would they have figured it out? Right, I mean, they only lost to Washington by 3. I don't remember if they played Oregon earlier in the year, but I think they had a loss to Mississippi State where they turned the ball over a lot. Like when they figured it out, this looked like a top 10 team. And in the bowl game, in the Oklahoma game, look, they got up early. Then they went down double digits, man, and their defense stepped up and they found it. And honest, McMillan, I'm going to be honest with you, the second half, he's uncoverable. This might be my new favorite player in the country.
Is he number 2 behind Luther Burden III in our receiver rankings for next year?
He may not be number 2, Max.
Stop.
Stop. No, I'm serious.
We've been singing the praises of Luther Burden all. You can't back out on me now.
No, for now, I will leave Burden 1.
Okay.
But it's going to be tight come next year. These McMillan at his size right now, about 6'5" and 210, as fluid as he moves. You know the name that I've been throwing out.
Throw it out again, please.
And as he moves, he looks like Mike Evans to me. He's so fluid. He's gonna win contested catches. He's so explosive. I don't think he's probably like a 4.5 guy, in the 40, but he's
fluid.
You don't see guys his size as fluid as they are. It's just not as he was a sophomore this year, correct?
Yeah, true sophomore.
He's it. I'm telling you, McMillan. I'll leave Burden number 1 for now.
All right.
But by this time next year, it might be flipped because Burden's got the more of he reminds me a lot of Devontae Smith. He's a
little bit of that, Debo after the catch though too. He's like a monster after the catch.
After the catch, can take the screen game, can get vertical, can do just a lot of good separator, a lot of those things. But McMillan, that guy's a freak. As smooth as he moves at 6'5", and he makes it look easy, and he makes contested catches look easy. I absolutely love that guy. And the fact that Arizona's not going to shy away from the run game either. I think the one thing they need to do, the one thing I didn't think looked great in the bowl game, now they were shuffling guys around on 3 weeks' notice because Jordan Morgan opted out, understandably. Just figure out what you have going on the offensive line.
Yeah.
As long as Fifita's protected enough and they can get the run game going to balance it, they're as dangerous, especially offensively, as any team in the country.
I love the storyline too. You actually told me this morning that Noah Fifita and Tetairoa McMillan grew up together, right?
I think they
played Pee-wee football.
I think they said they've been playing together since they were 12 or 13.
They went to the same high school and then obviously out at Arizona together. It's awesome. I think that's gonna be a really cool story, especially if Arizona is as good as we think they are. That's gonna be a storyline everyone's the Tez Johnson, Bo Nix adopted brother thing. That's gonna be something they always go to. And I think the Fifita McMillan growing up together and both being stars and throwing to each other is gonna be fantastic as well. But Jonah Coleman, man, another running back going back for them. Tacario Davis, their corner going back. Traden Stukes, their another corner going back. Michael Wiley's going back as well. They lose Jacob Cowling, another stud receiver that they have there. And Jordan Morgan, obviously their star left tackle, is gone as well. But it just feels like Arizona is just kind of, besides those two players, it's kind of the same exact team. And that team might finish in the top 10 of the final AP poll, honestly. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for them to be here at number 7 and the Big 12 champion as we have them ranked right now.
Yeah, no, they should be in the top 10 when the new poll comes out after the title. No, they absolutely should. The way they played the second half of the year and just, I mean, they're really talented. Actually, I think you mentioned Coleman and Wiley. That might be the most underrated duo of backs in the country. Wiley gives you a lot in the receiving game. Coleman is between the tackles. Dude. He is a tank.
He's like Audrey. He's like a mini Audric Estime a little bit.
Yeah, that's the exact comparison I have. He just is maybe. probably the most physical returning running back in the country.
And he could catch out of the backfield too, man.
Oh, absolutely.
Wiley's a stud receiver
He is
too.
a nightmare to tackle.
Yeah.
Coleman. I just love watching him run. Like he's like, it's like you just take a Notre Dame or a Big Ten running back and you just stick him in Arizona. For some reason, he ended up in Arizona, and just a monster. When you talk about they can take games and just start running, think about Oregon State, right? Just start running outside zone, just hand it to Coleman and let him hit somebody.
Yeah.
Because they have every element in their offense they could possibly want already.
Yeah. And some good defense. Like Takara Davis graded out really well. Traden Stukes graded out pretty well as well. So yeah, the defense, offense, everything is cooking for Arizona right now. So Jed Fish, man, they were a joke a couple years ago. I think they went 1-11 in his first year there. And now there's number 7 in our way too early.
He went to a team that had no talent.
Yeah,
at all, just at all. It was a mess. It really was. I don't know what had happened for a few years there where they just everyone stopped going to Arizona. But no, what he's built already is unbelievable.
Yeah. So right now, our Big 12 favorite for next year is Arizona, and one of the favorites for the Big 10 next year, now joining the Big 10, is Oregon. We have Oregon here at number 6. In our top 10 ranking. Obviously, they're losing a lot of talent. Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, Troy Franklin, Jackson Powers Johnson, Brandon Dorless, Kyrie Jackson. A lot is leaving. But they got the best transfer at quarterback, and best transfer period probably in Dylan Gabriel. Another Dante Moore. If Gabriel gets hurt, Dante Moore is right behind him as well. Kobe Savage out into the portal as well. They bring out some good players as well. And then a thing I think we need to mention, one of the most well-coached teams in the country, one of the best coached teams in the country with Dan Lanning and Will Stein holding up the offense. So Oregon here at number 6 should be seen as one of the top Big 10 contenders next year.
Yeah, most of a team returning that pretty much blasted everybody except for the 2 Washington losses. And I think getting Gabriel is the biggest factor here. When you talk about you go from a top 3 quarterback to Gabriel still like a top 8 quarterback, at least this year, and could be higher than that next year. It's a perfect fit. The scheme, the run game. Did we say Jordan James is coming back?
Yes, I think he is.
Jordan James is spectacular. Just spectacular.
Tez Johnson announced today he's come back.
Just an excellent football player. I don't see a scenario where Oregon doesn't. There's not many scenarios, I should say, where they're not a playoff team next year.
Yeah.
It's high floor. It is high ceiling too. I mean, the number of teams they beat by 30 points this year, I can't deny that. It's just, again, Penix and Washington, that's just the kryptonite. But Oregon in any other game, did they play the Texas Tech game was the only other close game they played all season. So getting Dylan Gabriel in there, it's just such a smooth transition, right? It's like, it's just so easy to just go, okay, get in there and let it rip, right?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So right now, Tez Johnson, Jordan James, Johnny Cornelius, or one of their tackles, has not announced yet, but he might come back. Jeffrey Basso, linebacker, good linebacker for them, he's coming back. Terrence Ferguson, tight end, might come back as well. Kobe Savage, I mentioned him before in the portal. They got him from Kansas State, really good safety. I like him a lot. So listen, they're losing a lot. But I think Oregon, as well coached as they are, they got a big time quarterback in the portal, and Dylan Gabriel, another big time one, and Dante Moore too. The future of Oregon is set. And man, how about Dan Lanning starting his Oregon tenure off with Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, and then Dante Moore right after that. That is a really good big 3 quarterbacks to start off with. So at number 6 is Oregon. So Dalton, you actually have our top 5 helmets over there. So you want to reveal who our number 5 team is right now?
Is right now the kings of the transfer portal. And, of course, as an FAU alum, maybe my favorite coach in the country, the Ole Miss Rebels and the Lane Train.
Yeah, have to be, right?
Absolutely. They've got to be up there. Look, they beat Penn State in the Peach Bowl. Of course, I had to. You were there for it. I had to bring it up.
I was.
Just an elite offensive team, building a ton of defense through the portal. Princely Umanmielen, Walter Nolan, Tamarion McDonald, Chris Paul, just adding, and even Juice Wells on offense. Now, you got a kind of a question mark this morning, because all of a sudden now we've got Quinshon Judkins in the portal, and the running game, it takes a hit. Judkins wasn't quite as efficient this year as he was last year, but still at times the engine of their offense. I think he forced 76 missed tackles again this year. Just a crazy number. He's really good, obviously. But, no, I think Lane Kiffin's the best play caller in the country. Jackson Dart, just continues to get better. I'd like to see him get better in straight drop-back situations outside of play action. But They're loaded with weapons. They're loading up on defense in the portal because they know the defense is the flaw, right?
Yeah.
They already would have been a playoff team this year. The only 2 losses were to Georgia and Bama, right? And those sides, Georgia and Bama are just better than them. Why? Because they can't stop the run. Ole Miss, that's just kind of it's where it's at. And I think Kiffin finally is buying in all the way in. I got to fix this defense.
Yeah.
This offense with me calling the plays, with maybe a top 20 defense instead of a top half, it's not great. That's an elite football team.
Yeah.
And the sheer amount of talent they've added in the portal is insane.
Mm-hmm. It feels like a little bit like Lincoln Riley, except Lincoln Riley changed the defense by just adding coaches, and Lane Kiffin, is just adding talent, man, crazy talent. So Jackson Dart is back, second highest grade among all returning quarterbacks, only behind Dylan Gabriel. Judkins is in the portal, but you bring back Trey Harris, who was a stud receiver, 7th in the Power 5 in yards per route run. Caden Prieskorn, who was hurt for the first 3 games. After that, he had 450 receiving yards, which was tied for 4th among Power 5 tight ends.
Penn State,
dude, 3 one-handed catches.
3 one-handed catches. Just
he was showing off at some point. It was insane.
Honestly, I was like, where did he come from with this? Like,
yeah, it's insane.
Talk about guys who could compete with Mitchell Evans.
No, yeah,
he might be
number 2 for tight ends. But listen, Judkins is a huge loss. Maybe he leaves the portal, maybe he comes back, maybe it's a play to get more NIL, maybe, I don't know. But if they get him back, that's massive. But still, man, Princely Monmielen, Tyler Barron, Walter Nolan, Decamarion Richardson from Mississippi State.
Oh, what an ad, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Chris Paul Jr., Juice Wells, the receiver from South Carolina who was hurt for a lot of this year. Another thing I want to bring up to with Ole Miss is that they avoid Alabama, Texas, and Missouri. All 3 of them in our top 10. They don't play them next year unless it's the SEC championship game. Also don't play Tennessee or Texas A&M either. So Ole Miss, they play Georgia, but that's in Mississippi. So that's a tough game. But other than that, I think the only game that they won't be favored in probably is that Georgia game. So they might have an 11-1 season next year. And I think it reminds me a lot of last year's Florida State, where Florida State finished number 11, where Ole Miss is right now. And then they brought back everyone, and then they killed the transfer portal. And then obviously they got snubbed from the playoff this year, but they were great. That feels like Ole Miss to me this year. So I think Ole Miss, number 5. I love Ole Miss at number 5. The Judkins news really hurts. But even if they lose him, which is not guaranteed yet, but even if they do lose him, it's still a really, really talented team next year. So you want to go over to another SEC team that we actually have at number 4 now.
Number 4, and they're not feeling so good right now, but they still have talent coming back, and we think their quarterback coming back. Texas Longhorns.
Yep.
Right? And I think, we saw the one flaw. Against Washington. It's just their secondary. They've already worked on adding Andrew Makuba to it from Clemson. Yep. If Quinn Ewers is coming back, you've got a big-time quarterback coming back who, look, he played really well in that game against Washington. It's not his fault. It's not his fault at all that they lost. They couldn't cover. And really, we might find out this week that nobody can cover Washington. That's tough.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a team, I think Sarkisian, Ewers, they're going to lose some weapons, but C.J. Baxter, he might be one of the top 5 backs in the country next year.
Maybe.
He's so good. Jaden Blue, I believe, coming back. What they have in the backfield and the way they run their offense, it's hard to think that they're not going to be high-flying again next year, especially if Ewers takes another step in his development.
Yeah, Ewers, I think, so he hasn't announced yet. And time of recording is not announced yet. Maybe he does by the time this episode drops. But in the post-game press conference, he kind of was hinting at it by saying, I know what we have coming back next year. We're going to be back. He was, talking like that. That, to me, sounds like, okay, he's going back. So, Ewers, Malik Muhammad, true freshman corner there, he was phenomenal for them this year. Kelvin Banks Jr., going to be a first-round pick at left tackle probably in 2025. Alfred Collins, another D tackle. They're losing Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy most likely. But Alfred Collins is still great out really high. Gavin Holmes potentially at corner. Jahdae Barron at safety potentially coming back too. And they added Trey Moore in the transfer portal, the UTSA edge, who really played well for them. And Matthew Golden, the receiver from Houston. They lose a lot. Literally, as we're recording, Jonathan Brooks officially declared for the draft, so he's gone. But Devondre Sweat gone. Byron Murphy potentially gone. A.D. Mitchell hasn't announced yet, but he's probably gone. Jatavion Sanders probably gone. Xavier Worthy is gone. Christian Jones is gone. They lose a lot on that offense and lose, obviously, Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. But Steve Sarkisian's still there. Great play caller. Quinn Ewers potentially coming back too. There's a lot of teams that are losing their quarterbacks this year. Texas does not seem like they'll be one of them. So that's why I think Texas, deserves a spot here. Especially making the playoff and now, going to the SEC. they're probably still a top 5-ish team.
Yeah, their front seven still really good. Their O-line's still really good. Run game. If Ewers is back, you're set there. That makes it a lot easier instead of having, for as much as some people want it to happen, instead of having to transition to Arch Manning so quick.
Yeah,
we'll get there, people. Don't worry. But it's one of these things where they just need to figure out at receiver and in the secondary. They're already working on the secondary, and I think at receiver it's not as bad as you might think because Sarkisian, so much of it is based after the catch, screen game. They run as many screens as anybody in the country. Play action, Sarkisian is a master of creating space and creating after-catch opportunities. So if he just finds some really good athletes out there, they're going to figure it out.
Absolutely. All right, another Big Ten team. This is actually our number 1 Big Ten team heading into next year, and who is it, Dalton?
It is maybe your national champion, Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah.
And I think, look, again.
Subject to change, by the way.
Subject to change, maybe one way or the other.
Yeah.
Who knows, right?
Yeah.
It might.
I thought you were pointing at FAU.
Oh, no. FAU might replace him at 3. Don't worry. Tom Herman coming in hot. No, the defense will be spectacular.
Yeah.
Not a question. Might still be the best defense, and they're not losing a whole lot off that defense. You got Will Johnson coming back, might be the best corner in the country. The questions are obviously going to be at head coach and at quarterback. Who stays, who goes? Is it both? Are both staying? If they both stay and win it all, they very well could win it all again.
Yeah.
I think is that a motivating factor for both of them? I think McCarthy and what the scouts think in the draft is going to be a big factor. If they tell them round 2-3 grade in this class like this, maybe he comes back. Harbaugh, obviously, there's a lot of stuff, certain teams getting talked about in the NFL. Is he staying? Is he going? Does he want to maybe try to build a dynasty here in a new Big Ten? There's a lot of mystery, which is kind of why we have him at 3. But the defense is gonna be great. They will, they will find ways to grind it out on offense. But it's when you're bringing back most of the best defense in the country and seeing what we've seen from them this year. Really, again, the second half of this year has been a lot of complimentary football. Just build it around the defense. The biggest questions are a head coach and a quarterback, and those aren't really questions you want to have going into something like this.
No, and number 3, especially if you're losing your head coach and quarterback, they're going to be lower if they lose both. But do you think if they lose to Washington, there's a better chance of them coming back than if they win?
I think there's other factors. I don't think it's just based on that.
Okay.
I think it's just between.
So I think if they win, I think they both feel good about leaving. All right, leave out on top.
What McCarthy, it's going to be based on the scouts. He's going to go to there's that scouting department at the NFL that tells you what round they think you're going in. If McCarthy, if they tell him he's going to be a top 20 pick, I have a hard time thinking he's coming back.
So do you ultimately think, let's make predictions right now, and this might look wrong ultimately by the time it comes out, but do you think McCarthy and Harbaugh are leaving, or do you think one of them is going to stay, or both of them are leaving?
I think McCarthy's going to leave.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of – it sounds like there's a lot of people in
first round
in the NFL that really like him as a top 50. Some of them we've heard top 10 talent.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put him in there. That's just me though. I'm kind of with Trevor, who I think has him 52nd on the board, 52nd, 53rd on it. He's got a second round grade.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with him on that. But there are people, if there's enough people in the NFL who think you're a top 10 pick, and the number of teams in the top 20
that need a quarterback,
that need a quarterback is ridiculous. I mean, you could go from one of the Bears all the way down to 18 with Pittsburgh right now. So that's I think McCarthy goes. I'm very much more 50-50 on Harbaugh.
I'm 50-50. I'm leaning him leaving though. I think
because it sure sounds like that it's either stay or go to the Chargers.
Yeah.
And there's been some talks that he absolutely loves Justin Herbert, that he think he could win it all with Justin Herbert. So Harbaugh is also a cash thing. It's still the alma mater. And remember, and everything they went through this year kind of emboldens that of listen, if we still win a trophy through all this, can we do it in a year where there's not so much of this going on?
But you got to remember the NCAA investigation too. They might have sanctions coming down the pipe. So that might be a motivating factor to get out of there.
I think Harbaugh is actually the harder one. I think McCarthy, if he goes to the scouts and they tell him you're going to be a top 20 pick, I think he's going to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Harbaugh.
I don't know
tough.
that he has a whole lot more to prove.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. He's already, what is his record? 26-1.
Yeah. something like that.
I don't know that he's got a whole lot more to prove other than unless they were to open the offense up more and run like a Washington-style offense. But they're not going to do that.
No,
so and if Harbaugh if he goes, McCarthy's gone for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's not going to stay with
Harbaugh might draft McCarthy, honestly. Like, he loves JJ.
Not if it's the Chargers, but.
No. Yeah. But if he goes somewhere else, like the Raiders or Bears, maybe. I mean, imagine JJ McCarthy, number 1 overall pick. He would do it. He loves JJ, dude. He loves JJ.
I'm gonna leave that alone.
He called him the best quarterback in Michigan football history, and I know he called him as good as Caleb Williams, too, so.
I'm going to leave that alone.
I don't know. But listen, besides him, Will Johnson mentioned coming back. Mason Graham, D tackle, stud. I mean, he might be one of the top D tackles heading into next year. Colston Loveland come back at tight end as well. Some other pieces on defense. They are losing Michael Barrett, star linebacker. Roman Wilson probably as well. Mike Samer still, Junior Colson, Josh Wallace. They're losing some guys potentially. None of them are announced yet, obviously, because they're still playing, and they're not going to do that before the game. But they are losing some guys. And they did get Jayshawn Barham in the portal. I love him. He was a really highly graded true freshman at Maryland. Took a step back this year, but I think he is going to help replace Michael Barrett and Junior Colson a lot at linebacker. So that's going to be really good. As long as Jesse Minter stays at D coordinator, man, that defense can be really good. And we'll see. I mean, Sharon Moore maybe could be promoted to head coach. I think that's likely to happen if Harbaugh leaves. I don't think they'll go after anyone else. Like Brian Kelly, I know has been linked there. But I think it's more likely that they promote Sharon Moore, who went 6-0 as head coach this year. So, yeah, we'll see with Michigan. Again, this is subject to change. We do not know anything about this Michigan Wolverine team after the national championship game. So we will update this when we find out more. But as of right now, assuming McCarthy leaves and Harbaugh stays, number 3-ish, or we don't know, man. I don't know. They're the most difficult one to even talk about. I want to get to number 2 now. Who's our number 2 team?
Number 2, and I think, honestly, the debate between 1 and 2 might have been the hardest one that we had.
Yeah, it was tough.
And you know, I think we're kind of riding the talent. They're getting the quarterback back. We're going to roll Tide at number 2. And, I mean, you get Milroe back. You get most of the defense back. McKinstry and the edge players got to be replaced, but they're getting some good transfers in. They get Damani Jackson in, probably slides right into Kool-Aid McKinstry's spot at corner. You have Milroe, and look, I think they proved to us this year. I think they were better than a lot of people thought they would be this year. Jalen Milroe was a lot better than people thought. Now they gotta get over some things like the offensive line obviously struggled with the blitz. Most of the year. Milroe struggled with it. Now you're losing J.C. Latham to the NFL draft. Your best offensive lineman, Seth McLaughlin, just entered the transfer portal, starting center. So things to figure out up front, I think, on both sides of the ball for sure. How do you replace Turner and Braswell? There's a lot in the trenches, which sounds weird for Alabama, that they have to figure out. But you have Milroe. Obviously you've got Saban. I think you said Terrion Arnold's 50-50 right now.
He literally just declared.
Just now?
Just now.
Killing me.
Yeah. Killing me. No.
Well, you know what? Well, then I'll switch over. You still have Caleb Downs.
Yep.
Elite. Maybe the best safety in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to find it on the back end of their defense. They got to find it on the D-line. D-line and O-line. I think offensive line especially is the biggest thing. And look, Jalen Milroe still has to get better. The second longest time to throw in the entire country, too long. There's a long time to throw, guys, but Caleb Williams is even one of them, but too long. I think it was up near 3.5 seconds on average.
Yeah.
It just can't happen, and that's where Michigan took advantage, blitzing him every play, speed him up, and he didn't have an answer. If Milroe can find that, if they can add some quick game to their offense, then you really have an elite, because they're going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
The threat of Milroe with whatever backs they have in there, they're going to be able to run the ball just on the dual threat thing, but. They need to find it, O-line, D-line, but I still think there's still Alabama, and they're still going to have an elite football. I would be shocked if they didn't make the playoff in some capacity.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, especially the 12 team now. They got LT Overton in the portal, former 5-star D lineman at Texas A&M, so they got him there. But, yeah, they're losing a good amount. But, again, Alabama always loses a good amount, and they always come back. And listen, we didn't think they'd make the playoff this year. We thought they were going to have a disastrous year, like 8-4, 9-3 after what we saw in the Texas game and the USF game. And they made the college football playoff anyway. So you can't doubt Nick Saban anymore, man. You really can't. So I think Alabama, worthy here at number 2. Losing a lot, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Dallas Turner, Jermaine Burton, most likely, J.C. Latham, Chris Braswell, Terrion Arnold. But you bring back Jalen Milroe, huge. I mean, he's like a top 2 to 3 quarterback probably in the country heading into next year. Got some really good pieces as well. Caleb Downs coming back as well. They got some guys coming back, but they are losing a lot. But I think with Nick Saban, the greatest coach of all time, Jalen Moreau going to be one of the top Heisman contenders next year. That's enough for me to be like, okay, it's Alabama. You can't have them too low here at number 2. But at number 1, Dalton, who is our number 1 team heading into next year?
That leaves us with the obvious one. We're going back to the well, even though they didn't win a third straight this year. The Georgia Bulldogs. It's still Kirby Smart. Bama was the only game they lost. You still could have easily argued them into the top 4 this year. Carson Beck coming back. Trevor Etienne coming in. Not losing a whole lot, if anything, on that defense. Still a very good defense this year. Wasn't quite like number 1 worthy like the last few years, but look, you got a boatload of talent. Malachi Starks on the back ends, and at least maybe, probably in the argument with Downs as the best safety in the country. You got Kirby Smart, coach defense. You've got Carson Beck, who was way better than anybody thought this. He may be the best quarterback in the country coming back, honestly. I mean, he just deadly accurate from the pocket. Perfect for their offense. And I'm telling you, I just absolutely love this Trevor Etienne thing. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, I think he's even more talented than the backs they had there this year. It's just such a perfect system fit. I can just see it already. Like Etienne, if he put up 1,500 yards next year, I wouldn't be that shocked.
No, I wouldn't be either.
I just think it's such a perfect fit. It's a better offense for him there. And just I just see he's a more traditional back than Travis was at Clemson. And I think this is the perfect offense for any traditional back like that.
Absolutely. And they had Colby Young in the portal, too, a big receiver from Miami. I like him a lot. London Humphreys, really talented receiver from Vanderbilt, also transferred in to Georgia. Now, they are losing a lot. Brock Bowers is gone. Greatest tight end in college football history. I'll die in that hill. Kamari Lassiter is gone as well, the corner. Marius Mims is gone. Javon Billard's gone. Tyke Smith is gone. Marcus Rosenby-Jackson is gone. Lad McConkey's going to be gone. Cedric Van Pran's probably gone. Kendall Milton's probably gone. They're losing a lot. But you got Carson Beck coming back. You got Malachi Starks coming back. You got maybe Dominic Lovett coming back. Michael Williams didn't really have the sophomore leap that I thought he would, but I still think he could be a first-round edge next year as well. And then you mentioned Trevor Etienne and the 2 receivers that got coming in and more. And listen, like Alabama, it's like, okay, they're losing a lot, but again, they always reload. Like Oscar Delp at tight end.
He's a good player. Obviously, nobody's Brock Bowers. He's a really good player. Like, yeah. I think he's shown it time and time again. He is at the very least a starting caliber tight end at Georgia, which comes with high. That's some high praise, right? That's some start. I mean, you got freaks at tight end at Georgia all the time. I don't know that he's a freak, but he's a good player. It's just a matter of how their passing game is going to jump. I think it'd be a big plus if Lovett stayed.
It would be. That would be a huge plus. So that's what we got, man. We got Georgia at number 1 of our way too early top 25. This is the top 10, as you can see right here. Notre Dame 10, Missouri 9, Penn State 8, Arizona 7, Oregon 6, Ole Miss 5, Texas 4, Michigan 3, Alabama 2, and Georgia 1. Before we go, Dalton, I just quickly wanted to talk about maybe any teams that were left out of the top 25 that just on the cusp, or maybe it feels a little weird leaving them out. Is there anyone that you can think of right now?
Not necessarily weird, because I think we had a lot of teams on the back end that we argued about that were of similar caliber to the teams that we probably had in like that back 5. Like we debated Kansas a lot. Yeah. The Big 12 actually was a big one. Like Kansas and Iowa State and West Virginia, we talked about all 3 of them. And I think the other thing too is who actually, we have Memphis for now at 25, but who actually is that group of 5 team going to be? I think it's a weird storyline where you've got, with SMU out, you've got Liberty losing pieces. Is it a South Florida with Byron Brown? Is it Boise State with Ashton Jeanty coming back? Is it, are we?
Oh, by the way, Boise State, I don't know if you saw this, Malachi Nelson is visiting Boise State. Can you imagine if they get him, dude?
Well, then you're talking. Then you're talking, because it's really all they're missing is in the passing game. I think for us, I think we had a lot of Big 12 teams lurking. You even mentioned to me Colorado, and I just couldn't do it with them only winning 4 games. But
I understand that.
A lot of Big 12 teams were lurking right behind there, and I think the group of 5 conversation is going to get wild now.
Memphis was our best guess. They are not at all like a head and shoulders above anyone else.
I would have picked Liberty still they still have an easy schedule next year, but losing Salter and Daniels, that's huge. That's your passing game.
Yeah.
And I know Jamie Chadwell, love him. But those are 2 guys going to be hard to replace.
The one team I want to shout out, because I'm sure their fans are going to be very upset. The highest ranked team actually that we don't have in our top 25 is LSU at number 13, and it does feel weird not having LSU in the top 25. But man, they lose Jaden Daniels, they lose Malik Neighbors, they lose Brian Thomas Jr., and they lose Mike Denbrock at OC. They haven't added much in the portal, and that defense is still a problem, especially that secondary. I know they got Harold Perkins coming back, but man, I like Garrett. I will say this: I like Garrett Nussmeier a lot at quarterback. He actually, wherever he plays, he looks really good. So maybe he's another star at quarterback. Maybe we are too low on LSU, but it just couldn't fit him in right now. They lose so much, and they aren't really adding anything. It feels like.
I mean, I think look, they had one of like the 3 worst defenses in the SEC this year, and their offense. I mean, what would their record have been if they didn't have the best offense in the country?
Yeah,
the Heisman Trophy winner. I just
it would have been disastrous.
I worry about LSU a little bit. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe there's some athletes that we're missing out on. But to replace Neighbors and Thomas and what they did this year at receiver, and Nussmeier, I mean, he might be a good player, but he does not bring the same dimension.
No.
It's running the football. Jaden Daniels had when you take out sacks, over 1,100 rushing yards. I mean, you don't replace. What's going to happen in their run game?
Yeah.
I mean, Daniels was their best rushing threat too, and I'm worried about their offense now too. And honestly, I think we have to worry a little about are we only about 75-80% sure Brian Kelly's staying?
Yeah.
There's some unstable things happening at LSU right now that I'm worried about.
They needed to hit the portal harder, and they just haven't done it. And yeah, they kind of worry. Again, it feels weird because they had a great season, and they're number 13 right now. And it's LSU. Like, it's not like this is like some out of nowhere program, but it's just with everything they're losing and it's a lot of unknowns, it feels weird. So LSU, NC State, we didn't have in our top 25. They are right now number 18. They were very close. We were arguing them.
That was a tight one.
Oregon State as number 19, but like they lose everything. I mean, everyone's gone. Yeah. So that wasn't really a conversation for us either. But yeah, that's basically what we got for our way too early top 25. Obviously, the season is now over, which is sad. But Dalton and I have a lot of stuff planned for the off season as well. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys subscribe to the audio channels as well: Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you don't want to see our faces every time, which I completely understand, you just listen to the audio podcast as well. But for producer Eli back there, who's the absolute GOAT for putting up with us and doing, I think we're over an hour and a half right now, Dalton, for this way too early top 25. We win.
Hopefully he's getting overtime.
Yeah, hopefully
Eli dealing with us.
Hopefully Eli's not like sleeping
dealing
back
with
there.
us anyway, especially both of us in person, man.
Hopefully the stream can end. Eli's not just sleeping back there, so one of us has to run back there. I'm hoping. But for Dalton Wasserman, my co-host, I'm Max Chadwick, and we will see you guys next time.